President Goodluck Jonathan at ICT conference in Chad urges African countries to step up ICT status for full digital compliance.
African governments must facilitate and support the deployment of the necessary ICT infrastructure required to connect our citizens to each other and the rest of the world.
Federal government reaffirms commitment to partner with relevant stakeholders to ensure containment of Ebola virus disease.
For now, initially, we may not insist that pioneers must first establish
Independent National Electoral Commission INEC continues to strategize towards a violence-free election in 2015.
And repositioning the Nigerian child for a better future through the instrument of legislation. Federal government rolls out policy action against child labor.
Now, estimates by the Bureau of Statistics indicate that over 15 million Nigerian children are involved in child labor.
To address this problem, the federal government has adopted a draft policy on child labor in order to ensure that the prevalence of the practice, which it says undermines national development, is curtailed.
Now, that policy puts the minimum age for employment of a child in Nigeria at 16, clearly outlines conditions under which children below the age can work and the nature of such jobs. The policy also states that engagement must be with the approval of the Minister of Labor and Productivity.
With the recent launch of the policy, which many believe has the potential to better the lot of the Nigerian child if properly implemented, it has become imperative to engage implementers and other stakeholders on the workability of the policy in a climate where child industry is a cultural expectation.
And so today on GMN, Good Morning Nigeria, we will, with the help of our guests, attempt to draw the line between building children to become enterprising adults and subjecting them to outright child labor. Now, this, along with implementing the federal policy on child labor for the good of the Nigerian child, will occupy us for the better part of our 2-hour stay on the program this morning. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak, and you're watching GMN. That means Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Kingsley Osadola is also here. Kingsley, I was wondering if you did one or two of any form of labor while growing up. Because I did.
And well, I think it's a point that we'll have to tackle in the course of the program. Assisting the family, assisting the parent in the course of growing up may, under certain circumstances, now qualify as child labor. But it depends on where the individual grew up. Actually, I mean, if it was in the rural setting, the child had to accompany the parents to the farm, and if it was in the city, depending also on the station of the parents, father or mother, and what was required. But obviously, there are things I didn't do. I mean, I didn't work on the farm.
You didn't help?
I didn't know, certainly. That wasn't part of my growing up. My name is Kingsley Osadola. I joined Claire in welcoming you to Good Morning Nigeria, which is coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As usual, we'll have our regular segments, which will be newspaper review, sports, arts and entertainment, business, and then foreign. We're joining Joy Owata now for the news. But just before we go on with the news, Joy, Claire, I was going to say this last week. This is the second week in a row. There is a traffic light at the intersection of Tafawa Balewa Road and Emeka Anyoku Street, right here in Area 11. It's just beside the Nikon Luxury Hotel. The traffic light coming on from the Nikon Luxury towards the central bank, traffic light is malfunctioning. The red and the green show simultaneously. And you know, Nigerian drivers would normally take a beneficial interpretation. So if there is green there, so I can move. Whereas, you know, the green, it's supposed to say go. The one coming from the CBN is working, but the one going towards the CBN is malfunctioning. There have been so many near misses at that particular spot. As I said, it's a walking distance. That's right. It's a walking distance from our studios here. And I do hope that those who are in charge, you know, can quickly take care of that. Actually, a black person, an African American, invented the traffic lights, so it's no big deal. So, Joy Ariata will join you now for the news this morning.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning. Here is the news. In continuation of federal government's efforts to forge a stronger alliance against terrorism and violent extremism with Nigeria's neighbors, President Goodluck Jonathan has held talks with his Chadian counterpart, Idris Deby. The talks in N'Djamena with President Deby, who is also the current chairman of the African Union's Peace and Security Council, is a follow-up to their discussions in Nairobi last week on the sidelines of the African Union Peace and Security Council Summit. The two leaders discussed further, behind closed doors, the actualization of agreements for greater cooperation against insurgents and terrorists reached by Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon at a meeting in Paris earlier this year. The talks are expected to lead to the strengthening of the Paris Accord on joint border patrols, intelligence sharing, and the prevention of the illicit movement of terrorists, criminals, arms, and ammunition across shared borders. President Goodluck Jonathan has called on African countries to become more active participants in the digital revolutions going on in the world. Speaking at an international conference on information and communications technology in the Chadian capital, President Jonathan observed that because of the strong correlation between efficient deployment of IETs and socio-economic development, Nigeria and other African nations stand to gain a lot from the effective adoption of the new technologies. He said African governments must facilitate and support the deployment of the necessary ICT infrastructure to connect citizens to each other and the rest of the world.
That is taking place all around the world. We must in fact be at the forefront of that revolution, creating information societies and knowledge-based economies. African governments must facilitate and support the deployment of the necessary ICT infrastructure required to connect our citizens to each other and the rest of the world.
The Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation has reaffirmed its commitment to enhance the existing National Geodetic Reference System of surveying and mapping projects in Nigeria. The Surveyor General of the Federation, Professor Peter Nwoli, made this known when he received the Minister of State for Works in his office. The Surveyor General harped on the importance of an efficient computerized mapping system in the country. As part of activities geared towards the sensitization of the Nigerian public ahead of the 2015 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is partnering some stakeholders to promote a violence-free election come 2015. The meeting hopes to address the challenges of the vulnerable in the society, as well as the security threat in the Northeast. The workshop was attended by both local and international organizations, such as the United Nations Development Programme, ECOWAS, and the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. The federal government says it will continue to partner with relevant stakeholders to ensure that the deadly Ebola virus disease is kicked out of the country. Minister of Health Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu gave this assurance during a courtesy visit at the ministry by the Pharmaceutical Group and Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. He assured the group that the federal government will continue to partner with private organizations in fighting diseases in Nigeria. The Pharmaceutical Group and Manufacturers Association of Nigeria commended the federal government for its swift response in fighting the scourge of the Ebola virus in Nigeria.
Existing government policy. Number two, we strongly appeal for protection and encouragement of Nigerian pharmaceutical manufacturers through the implementation and expansion of import prohibition lists.
And distribution policy. Yes, we've extended the dates for compliance, but also we need to encourage people, and that's why I approved that for now, initially, we may not insist that pioneers must first establish in all the geopolitical zones. We need to encourage.
Professor Onyebuchichukwu said the federal government is already partnering with the United States Center for Disease Control to strengthen the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. Equitable participation of women in politics and governance is essential to building and sustaining democracy. This forms the thrust of discussions at a 3-day leadership training for women in politics holding in Abuja, Nigeria. Participants at the workshop reiterated the need for political parties to give women the desired leverage to participate fully in the nation's political process. They called on women across the country to tap on their potentials and take their place in the mainstream of the nation building. The Minister of Defense, General Ali Gusau, says, contrary to speculations, Nigerian military is fully on ground in the troubled spots of the northeast to quell Boko Haram insurgency. The minister stated this in Abuja while inaugurating Course 23 of the National Defense College. The minister assured Nigerians that the nation is capable of solving its security challenges. And that's the main news this morning. It's back to Kingsley and Claire.
Well, thank you very much, Joy, for the news package. Claire, was going to pop the same question which she had asked me earlier, whether growing up you participated in any form of child labor. Joy?
I wouldn't say I did. Because I didn't do that. But I wish I did, to make me stronger. Really.
Just assisting parents. It's no big deal, but these are the ramifications we'll be looking at on the course of the program later on. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and business news is up next after this timeout.
Cup of jig in the water will get school uniforms whiter, and it is the tough stain fighter that will get your whites much brighter. Just Chickens! Pot puree and lemon. Just Chickens! Hey, you better go get it! Now available in lemon and pot puree fragrances, the newest and freshest way to chickens.
There is an Ebola virus epidemic in some West African countries. The Nigerian government wants you to be aware and watch out against the spread of Ebola in your community. Help keep our country safe. Refer anybody coming into Nigeria from any other West African country to a hospital for proper medical screening. And watch out for severe cases of fever, headaches, diarrhea, chest and abdominal pain, sore throat, cough, red eyes, and bleeding from the eyes, ears, and nose. Protect yourself. Wash your hands regularly with soap and sanitizer. Avoid contact with the blood, urine, feces, or saliva of animals like bats, monkeys, gorillas, chimpanzees, or infected persons. The Ebola virus is deadly. Don't catch it. Don't spread it. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
All right, talking business now this morning. Business experts say the growth of Nigeria's bond market is a plus for Nigeria's economy. Plus, Nigeria and 7 other African oil-producing countries set to experience boom in the coming years. Here is Shakel Laikbenayi with the details.
Good morning, and on business news today we'll be talking about Nigeria's bond market, which experts say has experienced significant growth over the years, attracting quantum interest from both domestic and international investors. The evolution of the bond market, both domestic bond markets and the opening of access to the international capital market have several benefits to the Nigerian economy. Speaking to a cross-section of journalists, Director General of Debt Management Office, DMO Abraham Nwanko, said bond market has helped to provide long-term funding to the private sector. This, in turn, helped them to embark on long-term projects, which has helped to generate growth and boost employment, thereby improving the nation's economy.
It's an evidence that that component of the transformation agenda of government, which is to make the private sector, to enable them occupy the driving seat in generating employment and growth for the economy, is already working.
Dr. Nwankwo said the ability of the private sector to issue bonds at the international market has made them active players in the international capital market. Nigeria and 7 other African oil-producing countries could experience boom in the coming years, with Mozambique and Tanzania set to emerge as new frontiers if they can attract enough investment. A report by PricewaterhouseCoopers says. The report also stated that 6 of the top 10 global discoveries in 2015 were made in Africa, with more than 500 companies now exploring across to the continent. The report further stated that the boom has brought investment opportunities despite the lingering challenges of corruption, lack of infrastructure and regulation, as transactions worth some $1 billion occurred every 17 days in Africa's oil and gas sector last year. The PricewaterhouseCoopers report, however, cautioned that the continent faces fierce competition for vital investment from other parts of the world. The report said demand for oil in Africa was also expected to rise significantly over the next 20 years, driven by population growth, urbanization, and the emergence of a middle class. The report also stated that in gas that is even more concentrated, with 9/10 of annual natural gas production of 6.5 trillion cubic feet coming from Nigeria, Libya, Algeria, and Egypt. The report seems to offer a glimmer of hope for Nigeria's gas subsector, which has not been fully utilized for the nation's domestic electricity supply. Another report says Nigeria sees lower U.S. imports than Angola for the first time, according to data from the Energy Information Administration, EIA, which is the statistical arm of U.S. Energy Department. While deliveries of crude oil from Angola to the United States have averaged around 116,000 barrels per day since the start of 2014, imports from Nigeria have seen a steeper fall, with just 75,000 barrels per day. Platts analysis of Energy Information Administration data showed that U.S. annual imports of Angolan crudes are on track to surpass imports of Nigerian crudes for the first time since the EIA started tracking such data in 1973. The most recent yearly data shows Angolan exports to the U.S. was down 59% from a peak of 534,000 barrels per day in 2006, while Nigerian exports fell 75% over the same period. For 6 consecutive weeks between June 27 and August 8, the U.S. imported no crude from Nigeria, the longest period that the U.S. has gone without imports from Africa's top oil producer. Shale drilling has boosted U.S. oil outputs to the highest level since 1986. Sources said the main reason for the increase in Angolan imports and decrease in Nigerian shipments are the comparative ease of blending Angolan grades with shale crude, as well as demand for heavy refined products and feedstocks, which favors Angolan crudes. Shale crude is very light and sweet and similar in quality to Nigerian crude. As a result, the U.S. no longer needs as much Nigerian oil as it once did. Let's now take a look at stocks report. The market closed Tuesday on a negative note, with a 0.14% loss in the market all-share index to close at 40,868.02 points. The market had opened the week on Monday on a positive note with a 0.84% gain before nosediving again on Tuesday. Let's take a look at graphic details of transaction on the floor of the exchange. only hope for better deals today. And elsewhere, UK stocks declined for a third day, tracking loss in the US equities as Bank of England Governor Mark Carney said the time to raise interest rates is nearing because of better than expected economic recovery. On that note, we end business news. It's back to Claire and Kingsley. Have a good day.
Thank you very much there for the business package. Stay tuned now for the newspaper review. Bayo Atoyobe is right here with us in the studios for the newspaper review segment. Bayo, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, we begin our newspaper review this morning with The Guardian. And the lead story on the front page of The Guardian is a double-decker headline that says 20 police officers still missing after Boko Haram attack. 20 police officers still missing after Boko Haram attack. And there are three riders to that lead story. Cameroon claims killing over 100 terrorists. And insurgents allege capture of Bama and others. And government to restructure defense ministry. And the second lead of the paper, just below the photograph on the front page there, says reps in Lagos may review schools resumption date over virus. That has to do with Ebola. Reps Lagos may review schools resumption date over virus. And the rider to that says Ebola kills 2,300 and afflicts over 4,200. And also on the front page there, Jonathan seeks ICANN support in move against tax evaders. Agency raises team to combat evasion. Of course, that agency has to do with the taxing authority, tax collection authority. And the news notes on the front page of The Guardian, there are three of them. IGP, that's the Acting Inspector General of Police, who deploys more CPs as Commissioners of Police to command formations. Details to be found on page 3, and also on page 4 there are two stories promoted on the front page there. Government warns against purchase of pre-registered SIMs and used phones, and Jonathan in charge tasks Africa on ICT. Claire?
Okay, we turn to the Blueprint newspaper. It leads with EFCC, how state governments loot public treasuries. EFCC, how state governments loot public treasuries. It's the lead story on the front page of the Blueprint. And there's also a picture story there right in front of you that Governor Umaru Tanko Almakura laying the foundation of the construction of Latvia ultra-modern market in Nasarawa that took place yesterday. Just trending also on the front page, 21 die in Kebbi Jigawa auto crashes. And that's the front page. But let's quickly take a look at the insights pages, turning to page 5. And on page 5, we have a story, "We are winning war on terrorism." And this is coming from Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Adeshola Musu. "We are winning war on terrorism." That's on page 5. And also trending on that page, FAN denies report on U.S. Air Marshal. And OBJ's son to Atiku, "I'm eager to return to battle." OBJ's son to Atiku, "I'm eager to return to battle." Okay, on page 4, just on the other side of the inside page, you have reps to review September 22 schools resumption date. Reps to review September 22 schools resumption date. Just as Rivers Health Commissioner assures on EVD. EVD is, of course, Ebola virus disease. An 18-month-old baby discharged. Okay. Virus, Kaduna begins training of 13,000 teachers. Okay, those are the stories trending on the Blueprint.
Okay, but very quickly, I would like us to return to The Guardian. We now go to the inside pages. We'll take a story each from page 4 and also page 6. On page 4 of The Guardian, there's a story there that's essentially a follow-up. FAN, that's the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, and police deny attack on American Air Marshal in Lagos. There was a report earlier that there was an alleged syringe attack on American Air Marshal. So FAN and the police are denying that attack. Also on page 6, there's a story there. We took that story much earlier, some days ago. Sani Dangote appeals order freezing his accounts. Of course, there was an earlier order by the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos, which froze the accounts of his companies in 20 commercial banks. Sani Dangote is related to Aliko Dangote, the business mogul. So I move over now quickly to Vanguard. And the front page of Vanguard has a lead story also on the insurgency. Military Boko Haram battle for CDS's town. CDS, of course, stands for the Chief of Defense Staff. And there are 4 riders to that. Troops recover 17 vehicles, anti-aircraft guns, and others. And another rider says, Bama, Michika, Maraban, Mubi under our control. That's the claim by Boko Haram. Another writer says, Emir of Mubi flees with residents, and local government chairmen desert councils. I'm eager to return to battlefront. That's Obasanjo. Of course, that's a reference to Obasanjo's son, the Lieutenant Colonel, who was injured in an ambush by Boko Haram elements. Also on the front page of Vanguard, there are 2 promotional stories there. Ebola scare at OAU. Student evacuated to Lagos for screening. Details on page 56. And also on the front page of Vanguard, a story which I just took earlier from The Guardian. FAN, that's Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, denies alleged syringe attack on U.S. Air Marshal. And one story that we'll take from inside the paper is on page 6 of Vanguard. Page 6 of Vanguard. There's also an illustrative photograph there. FG, federal government to ban pomo consumption. That's on page 6.
Kingsley, federal government to ban pomo consumption. I wonder.
High on scale. I mean, that's yes to improve supplies to the tanneries. I'm sure that's the reason.
This way, everything is related to Ebola virus disease.
No. Pomo has no relationship whatsoever to Ebola. Actually, pomo has virtually 0 cholesterol, so it's pretty healthy. But I mean, it's a loss to those who operate the tanneries, and we need them for high on scale.
Okay, we move to New Telegraph front page. There is a story there. I'd just like to draw your attention, and of course Mr. Toribi's attention. Subscribers spend 602 billion naira on calls in 5 months. Telecom subscribers in Nigeria spent about 602.6 billion naira on airtime for their phones to make calls in the first 5 months of the year, spanning from January to May, and this is according to this paper's investigations. Okay, just to move inside page now, on page 6, I also like to draw your attention. Afenifere Imo Assembly kick against distribution of new polling units. Afenifere Imo Assembly kick against distribution of new polling units. There you have it. And then turning to page 8, and on page 8, just to flip the other side, we have Ebola reps TUC oppose school resumption date. On page 8, you find that story. Ebola reps TUC oppose school resumption dates. Of course, it's riding there with death toll reaches 2,288 coming from WHO, and Lagos threatens companies over stigmatization. Okay.
Okay, let's move over now to the Daily Trust. We go to the inside pages of the Daily Trust, inside pages of Daily Trust. Page 3, for instance, of Daily Trust says U.S. Air Marshal attacked with syringe. That's the old story. We just read the rebuttal by FAN and the police on page 3. Goza attack. IG says 20 policemen still missing. And NHRC visits Zakzaki to probe Courts Day killings. That's the National Human Rights Commission. Those details can be found on page 3. On page 4 of the Daily Trust, Emir of Mubi, others move to Yola. Emir of Mubi, others move to Yola. And also On page 4, we have a story that says Obasanjo hailed over son's role in fighting insurgency. Claire?
Yes, okay. Quickly, let's quickly take a look at other stories now, trending lead stories. Leadership highs ISIS offering advice to Boko Haram. That's coming from a report. It's on the inside page, page 5. And Obasanjo's wounded son wants to return to war. The lead story on the leadership ISIS offering advice to Boko Haram. That's coming from a report. It's there. And quickly, pilot is leading with Boko Haram invades CDS hometown. And it had several riders. Cameroon kills 100 insurgents. 20 policemen still missing from Goza attacks. That's the Nigerian pilot leads with a similar story on the attack of the Boko Haram. And Daily Sun, finally, from me, Kingsley. Daily Sun also leads with that story on Boko Haram set to capture CDS Badders town. It has other riders there, of course, and some other trending stories on the front page. Shall we go to Mr. Toby?
Let's take over from
Well, let's look at from the battlefront, specifically the insurgency. There is encouraging news that Adeboye Obasanjo is not, his injury is not threatening. He's stable, and he has even expressed eagerness to return to battlefront. However, the insurgents are claiming that they still have control of Bama and Michika. But you will recall that Lieutenant Colonel Obasanjo was actually wounded at the Michika axis, where they have taken over Baza from the insurgents. That is around the Michika area. Also, I don't know why they are specific about referring to the hometown of the CDS, Vintim. I don't know what objective that has, but similarly, the commander of the 3rd Armored Brigade, he said to come from Baza, and they were saying his hometown too was under attack, but all those have now been repelled. But some newspapers are also quoting Boko Haram as saying that they have control of Bama and Michika. And you know, in a war situation, truth is always the first casualty. But all these newspapers are attributing their stories to Reuters. I think I monitored an on-air program yesterday where somebody spoke to somebody in the war front, and he confirmed that Gaborungala, Bama, have already been taken over by our soldiers, and it's no longer under the control of Boko Haram. So we need to be a little bit careful, particularly the way they reported the evacuation of the Emir of Mobi to Yola. Actually, the Emir refused to move. It was our soldiers who went there because of the nature of the pressure of the war against the insurgents. They prevailed on him to move, and they actually escorted him out of Mobi to Yola. So it's not as if every emir will want to stay in his emirate and protect his citizens, and would rather prefer to die rather than abandon his citizens. So we need to put all those in context. Ebola now, there is alarm by the World Health Organization, and the alarm bell is ringing for Liberia and Sierra Leone, particularly that the death toll there has reached 228, and infection rate is about 4,206. But you also will recall that as Nigeria, Ebola has been bracketed into a standstill. We have one patient who is being treated. There are about 19 who are also being monitored. And all those who have had first, second, and tertiary contacts have been placed under radar. And as far as Nigeria is concerned, there is no alarm. But however, we need to be careful because there's concern expressed by the TUC, Trade Union Congress, as well as the House of Representatives, that the September 22nd resumption date might be too early, because the TUC is alleging that private schools are putting pressure on government to occasion the resumption early. But I think if we remember, the National Council of Health met with the National Council of Education as a security meeting to evaluate the state of Ebola in Nigeria. And based on the information available, they collectively took a decision of September 22nd. And I think it is all in our interest to not to raise unnecessary alarm. However, it is also preferable to err on the side of caution rather than resume hastily and then have Ebola at our doorstep. Don't forget that our population is quite huge, and if there is Ebola, it can be very devastating. And the level at which it has been contained is quite very encouraging.
Just before you continue with another of the topics, let's just take a look again at a photograph on page 2 of Daily Trust in terms of the precautions that would need to be taken. There's a photograph on page 2 of Daily Trust. It's tagged the photo of the day. Man with a monkey at Day Abuja yesterday. That's actually a baboon, but of course, you know, and these are the kinds of social behaviors that should be frowned at. You know, you recall some days ago there was a story we read about some policemen at a station who took to their heels when a man arrived at the station with a monkey. But here you are. This is probably a circus show operator, and is moving around with a baboon on his back. So I think that the authorities, you know, whoever they may be, social health workers, you know, social workers, health workers, should frown at things like this, and even persons around, you know, should be sensitized as to the inherent risks of this kind of association. The guy has got a monkey at the moment. Yeah, there's a saying that a person has a monkey on his back, but this guy's got you know, a baboon on his back. So he has to get it off. So, Bayo.
Yes, thank you about that. Well, we all need to be very cautious, because we shouldn't forget that this is a zoonotic disease, and the basis of it all is from primates, particularly bats, monkeys, baboons, and chimpanzees. We cannot take any unnecessary risk. The issue of telecom that Claire raised is very intriguing. Nigerians spend between January and May 602 billion on telephones, making calls. On the average, each person is set to spend about 935 naira making phone calls. But the worrying thing about telecom is that there are instances of drop calls. There are challenges with even clarity of voices on when you make phone calls. There are incidences where you are talking to a different person, another person is also talking. And each time these issues are raised, we are told that the lines are oversubscribed. Therefore, you have few lines, and there are so many people on it. I want to draw a parallel with Claire's axis, MKA, MNK, Marara Karu axis. Is that?
District.
Okay.
MNK district.
Now, you have a broad road. Look at the volume of traffic, but there's only one road out of the place. So you now have congestion. That is why we are having on our telephone lines. The population of subscribers is said to be 131 million. And I remember there was a visit by the House of Rep Committee on Telecommunications when they visited Turkey some couple of years ago. And it was pointed out to that committee that the cost for tariff in Nigeria is among the highest in the world.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, some weeks ago,
we are not getting quality for service.
That's correct. Some weeks ago, Claire, if you recall, we had the NCC Director of Communications. He was here with us. We articulated all of these challenges, and then we also had another spokesperson whom we took from Lagos on these issues. But the problems are persisting. Drop calls, and you know, that's the typical challenges that we are faced with, and needless high cost of making calls. Yes.
Now the issue of Pomo. There was a conference at Ibadan, and the Honorable Minister for Agriculture, Akiubi Additional, was drawing attention to the dollar we can earn from the Pomo we are consuming. In other words, if it were to go to the tanneries and we were to provide leather and export them, we could earn dollar. But somebody else could say, this is stomach infrastructure. You recall, in political terms, the same issue was raised about stockfish, okporoko and pomo, panla, during campaigns. They said it had no food value, but this is a delicacy that Nigerians value. So that is the dilemma. Is it the priority for the dollars, or the benefit of Mama, as Kinsley pointed out,
zero
cholesterol level.
Zero cholesterol.
The Super Eagles are hovering over Cape Town.
Just less than.
We are playing today, and I want to say I wish Super Eagles good luck in their match against Bafana. It may be recalled that the last time we played them, we beat them 3-1. And the only time they were able to win the African Cup of Nations was when Nigeria was not at the
I hope this will also be
Nations.
the period for them to break the jinx. Because they've always been losing to Nigeria.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bayo Atoyebe, for coming. You're watching midweek's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll now go straight to business. Stay with us.
Good luck, Jonathan. You are good luck to Nigeria. Good luck, Jonathan. You are good luck to Nigeria. Everywhere you go, you are good luck to the people. Continue your good work. Nigeria support you.
Excuse me. What people are looking for in Sokoto, we are having Sokoto. Good luck and what every parent and wish is speaking. In school, in business, in life. Everybody are looking for good luck. Every country are looking for good luck. In World Cup tournament, good luck. Or Louisa come back to life, good luck. The schools are now breaking all over to betterment the future of Almajiris. Good luck. Or universities are properly funded. Good luck. My dear brothers of the North, are you see what I'm saying? Agriculture are now walk over. And 33 modern dams are ready for farmers. Good luck. Fertilizers are purchased for almost free of charge. FOC. I am talking of power supply. That power reform are make steady supply of light every daily. Let us thank God. Power good luck. Good luck continue for Nigeria. This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. Down for one vision, Nigeria.
A new day is almost a clean slate. The plethora of opportunities offered. The chance to choose.
Investing in agriculture is the key.
Set your agenda. Begin your day. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, in the past, particularly in the African culture, children, ran errands for their parents as part of the process of child upbringing, worked with their parents, and of course learned skills they would use as adults. But today, all that is changing. Children are forced to fend for themselves and sometimes also, take care of their family's needs to the detriment of their own education. Now, there's been concern about the effect of this on national development and the fact that it also provides a reservoir of children for easy recruitment into violent acts. As a backgrounder to our discussion today, Ignatius Nkwo presents this piece on child labor, a global phenomenon.
Globally, child labor remains one of the social problems of the 20th century. Nigeria, as part of this global village, is also grappling with this crime against humanity. Children who are supposed to be nurtured and protected are now being exploited by those who are meant to protect them. Child labor is defined as work that is mentally, physically, socially and morally dangerous and harmful to children and deprives them of opportunities for schooling and development. These jobs include being street vendors, begging, car wash, shoe shining, and using them as domestic servants. It has become a major source of concern in Nigeria that in spite of legislation, the National Labour Organization reports that the number of working children under the age of 14 in Nigeria is estimated at 15 million. Social workers observe that major causes of child labor in Nigeria are widespread poverty, rapid urbanization, breakdown in extended family affiliations, high school dropout rates, and lack of enforcement of legal instruments meant to protect children. In a concerted effort to check child labor in Nigeria, the federal government has initiated several programs in the past. This time, it appears the federal government is taking an aggressive measure against child labor as it launched the National Policy and National Action Plan on Child Labor in August 2014. While presenting the draft copy of the new policy to the Federal Executive Council, the Minister of Labour and Productivity, Emeka Rogu, explained that the policy is the product of a consultative process of stakeholders. He noted that it has set the stage for effective collaboration and implementation of child labor interventions across the country. Over the years, some cultural practices in various Nigerian communities have encouraged child labor. The new policy provides that those under 16 should not enter into any contract of employment and that no recruiter should employ young persons. The policy prohibits a child from being employed or engaged except where he is employed by a member of his family on light work of an agricultural, horticultural or domestic venture which must be approved by the minister. Children who are exposed to such labors stand the risk of sexual abuse and involvement in crime and several other societal vices.
Okay, thank you there for that background. And joining us on the studio here in Abuja is Mrs. Chinyere Emeka Anuna, a senior program officer with the International Labour Organization, which of course is one of the agencies of United Nations. Mrs. Emeka Anuna, I would like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's begin by giving our viewers the benefit of some of the critical components of the policy on child labor. What are the principal highlights, as it were, of this new policy?
Okay, thank you. The principal highlights are, first of all, we have the introductory part, what informed the development of the policy. We have definition of the concepts, like what is child labor, what is hazardous job, what forms of child labor, and different concepts that are being used when you describe issues of child labor. Then we also have the issues talking about roles and responsibilities of the different agencies, or the different NDAs and even development partners, CSOs, trade unions, employers organization, because you know this is a multi-sectoral thing. And then we also have the setting up of the National Steering Committee and what their roles will be. Then we also have the part on the National Action Plan, which is actually what we use to implement what the policy is talking about. And then we also have the issue of resource mobilization, we have the issue of review, you have the issue of monitoring and evaluation of the policy.
What is child labor according to the policy?
I will have to define child labor in a way that is very simple for everybody to understand. Child labor is any work that is detrimental to a child, that inhibits a child from growing to achieve his or her full potentials, that affects a child negatively, either physiologically, physically, mentally, health-wise, socially, educationally. Actually, they affect a child negatively in all its ramifications.
What kind of work? Let's just be practical about it. Hawking,
yes.
Running errands?
No. Running errands.
Okay,
since I've talked about child labor, maybe to make it also easier, I need to talk about child work. The policy also differentiates between child labor and child work. Child work is like running errands. It's the work that a child does that is commensurate to the child's age, that actually socializes the child to be able to be a responsible citizen in the nation. So that is why it's different from child labor. So when we talk about child labor, actually the part of the work that was done was also to develop the list of hazardous work that can affect a child or that can be categorized into child labor. And what we did with the Federal Ministry of Labor and Productivity and other stakeholders is to develop this list of hazardous jobs, and it has been categorized into 10 different sectors. They have actually 26 activities, but in 10 different sectors of the economy that a child can perform, and then you categorize it as child labor. So these areas are you have construction, you have manufacturing, you have commerce, which also includes some aspects of the hawking where you talked about, or children working in shops. And then you also have maybe the street begging, because it's for commercial purposes sometimes. And then you also have our textile, which is mainly the tie and dye industry. You have the tannery. You also have the agricultural sector, especially in plantations. You also have the mining, which have the quarries and the breaking of stones and all that. You also have domestic work. So I think these are basically the major sectors where you have most of our children involved in, which constitutes child labor, when we say that when the child is doing it to the detriment of his or her health and other factors that I've mentioned before.
Within our context, our cultural context, would child labor be out of place?
I think
think child labor in any culture is out of place because, like you, in the process of upbringing within the African culture entails engaging the child, in some form of activity. Yeah, that's why earlier on I had to differentiate between what you call child labor and child work. Even for those of us, when we were growing up, we helped our parents, we supported our parents, even people in the village. They go to school, and when you come back, you can go to the farm to support your parents in farming. And that's why we said child labor is different from child work. Any work that a child does that is commensurate to the age, and at the same time, the child is allowed to go to school. The child is allowed to participate in recreational activities. The child is allowed to be a child first and foremost. It's not child labor.
I was just wondering, you see, Claire raised this question again, and that has to do with the conceptual clarification, child labor and child work. I'm sure you will agree that in some cases there's a very thin line that separates both concepts. And I give you an example. Some of the hawkers we see on the streets, some of them are actually pupils or students, and they do that hawking after school hours. And now, if you were to look at the rural setting, where you gave an example now, yes, a child goes to school in the morning, comes back, and then goes to the farm to join the parents. That would be the equivalent in the urban setting. Now, are you making a distinction between child work in the urban setting and child work in the rural setting?
There is no distinction whether it happens in the city or it happens in the rural area. But if you look at and when a child is hawking, does that portend danger to the child? You will agree with me that the life of the child is at risk. The child can also be kidnapped. The child can be killed while he's running across the road. When you see those children meandering the cars, you know that, especially if you go to Lagos and you see the speed at which children cross highway, the highway roads because they want to hawk, then that will tell you that the life of the child is at danger. So that's when I say, you don't define child labor only if it affects the educational. So that's why I say if it affects either the educational, health, physiological, even when you want to help, that's why I say sometimes parents can make their children to be engaged in child labor. If you have a 10-year-old child and you give the child to carry gallons of water that you know is too heavy for the child, that it might make the child not to grow to its full potential, then that means you are not helping your child at all. So I think the parents need to balance it to know when to ask the child to do child work, and then to know when you are gravitating towards child labor, which is not what we are saying, that anything that makes a child not to be unable to achieve his or her full potentials, I think no mother or father wants the child to be that.
I was just wondering, in order that this is not reduced, as it were, to an academic exercise, maybe we'll go back again to the introductory aspect. What informed this policy, and crucially, what consideration was given to poverty as a factor in child work?
The policy is not something that started today. The process of formulating this policy started as far back as 2000. And that's why we're saying it has been a consultative process. Different stakeholders have been involved. There were zonal workshops where those states, national, and zonal people of different NDAs and different NGOs, trade unions, employers association were engaging. And that's where we look, if you look at it, when you want to talk about child labor, you look at the peculiarities also of your environment. And that is taken into consideration. That's why when you look at our list of hazardous jobs, if you compare it to what will be obtained in another country, it will be different. Because we look at what is prevalent in Nigeria, where children are seen to have been working. And that is what we do. And like you rightly mentioned, also the policy talks about causes of child labor, which, like you have pointed out, poverty is one of them. Unemployment is one of them. Also, lack of awareness is also one of them. But then, when you talk about poverty, I've always asked, in these days that we have free education in most of the states, how come we still don't have children going to schools? And I've also seen, and I've also asked that you also go to some places, you see the poorest of the poor. Their children are not also engaged in child labor. So sometimes it depends on the value you place on your child. I don't know how much a child that is hawking orange or granite of 500 naira will bring in that will make you expose that child. How much profit is it that the child will now have to be running around? We've had cases of girls, very tender young girls who have been raped, and then the granite taken from them by their rapers, and they are given maybe 300 naira, or they calculate the amount of money that they would have sold for the granite, which is, when you look at the damage to that child, is it worth the 500 naira that you have gotten? So that we need to balance it. We know that poverty has been a root cause of child labor. Unemployment is one of them, like I said. There are also other causes which are not related to. We also see one of the other things is that our cultural practices, the issue of fostering children, where you give your child to your sister, your uncle, your cousin, maybe you are in the village, and then there are promises of sending the child to school. And then when the child gets to the city, the story changes. Or maybe it's not even indirectly you're handing your child over to a trafficker, who now gives your child to somebody. That somebody gives your child to another somebody. And in the next 1, 2, 3 years, you haven't seen your child. Your child is not going to the school that you thought this child is going to. And your child is being exploited. Actually, child labor is about exploitation of children.
Let's just look at this again so that we'll explore the efficacy, the potential efficacy of this policy. But in other climes, yes, you have said that the list of hazardous jobs is unique to different jurisdictions. Let's look at the role also of the welfare state, because it is where you have a higher or a more effective social safety net. That you can say, okay, a man is out of work, you have unemployment benefits. A child, has benefits, from age 1 day to X number of years, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it becomes a lot easier to enforce policies or legislation against child work or even child labor. Now, you've itemized poverty, you have itemized social practices, cultural idiosyncrasies, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, yes, the government is growing, is putting together our own social safety net, but over time, that might become effective. But as it is now, how much, can we really, as a government, be in a position to do that, to supplement the meager incomes of parents so that they do not then put their own children out to be hawking oranges for which they might make 300 naira or 200 naira? Is this a policy that is just mere paperwork, or you want that you imagine is going to be effective?
I understand that you have some interventions, some form of interventions as well.
Yeah. Okay, I will tell you the policy does not work in isolation. It has to be carried along with other policies. And also, it may interest you to know that the policy also has a national action plan which details activities or projects and programs that can be used to be able to curtail or eliminate child labor. And like I said, it's a multi-sectoral thing. Each and every one of us have a role to play. When you look at the action plan, it has different sectors of work that should be done. There is an area on creating awareness. First of all, we need people to know what child labor is and how it can inhibit a child developing his or her full potential. So that sometimes people are ignorant. They just want to, yes, I need money, so my child is there out to help me. Then we also need the different agencies of government have different roles to play. Federal Ministry of Women, as the government agency that has the mandate of children, have an important role to play. Ministry of Education have an important role to play. Like you said, Nigeria is developing its national social protection policy. That will also have a role to play, because it is when the policy is adopted. Now we have some social safety nets here and there, but when it's adopted and there is a coherence about what is happening, then it's not something we can do in a day, because social safety net does not cost little. It takes a huge amount of money. So that's why I said everybody had to be on board, all the different ministers. And what the policy has also asked is for all the different government agencies that have activities relating to children should have a budgetary allocation on yearly basis to be able to implement activities pertaining to their agencies in order to make sure that we are working towards the same direction and the same goal. And like Claire rightly said, we collaborate at different levels, at the regional and also the national and the state level, to work with our different partners also to support the government in dealing with these issues of child labor. Part of the activities we have done and we are doing is that we try to identify those children, we put them out of what they are doing.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I have to come in here. We'll just continue with this discussion. Actually, on top of the hour, we have to go back to our newsroom where Joy Eyuata is. Joy, will return to you for a quick look at the top stories.
Thank you, Claire. President Goodluck Jonathan has called on African countries to become more active participants in the digital revolutions going on in the global scene. The Surveyor General of the Federation has reaffirmed its commitment to enhance the existing national geodetic reference system for surveying and mapping projects in Nigeria. The Independent National Electoral Commission has met with local and international organizations in a bid to ensure a violence-free election in 2015. The Minister of Defense, General Aliyu Gusau, has assured Nigerians that the nation is capable of tackling its security challenges. And Minister of Health, Professor Onyebuchichukwu, says that the federal government will continue to partner with private organizations in fighting diseases in Nigeria. And those are the top stories at this time. I now hand you back to Kingsley and Claire.
All right, many thanks, Joy Eyuata. We're back to Mrs. Chinyere Emeka Nuna, is Senior Program Officer with the International Labour Organization, ILO. You were talking about, some of the interventions,
yes,
collaborative efforts.
We have had with the government, and what we do is that for the immediate beneficiaries, as I'm talking about children and their parents, what we have done is that. And still do is that these children are identified, and then they are taken out of the exploitative situation, and we place them in schools, and we support them with stipends. We support with school books, we support with uniforms, sandals, and maybe lunch packs to help them stay in school. But like rightly mentioned earlier, we also know that unemployment and poverty is also some of the major causes of child labor. So what we do also, we try to capacitate the families of those children to generate some income so that they don't bring these children out and place them back in the exploitative situation that they've been removed from. So we do like business skills trainings for them after they have identified their areas of interest. And after they have done the vocational skills and some form of business skills, we also try to provide startup kits. Like if you have done like carpentry, we can provide you with tools and some money to buy woods to start off a small business. And not only for families, also what we have done that children who are up to the age of working, we also encourage them. Some of them have also been trained in some form of vocational skills, and we also provide startup kits for them. And meanwhile, but when you come at the national level, what we did was to work with Federal Ministry of Labor and other social partners, the trade unions and the workers' organizations, and other relevant stakeholders to develop this child policy.
Okay, I would have loved to ask you, but we will be going to our Lagos Network studio, where Professor Friday Ndubisi has already joined us. Professor Ndubisi is a professor of philosophy. And Professor, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Okay, we're looking at the issue of child labor, child labor against the policy, of course, the child labor policy that the federal government recently launched. We've been speaking with the senior program officer of ILO, and she's been talking about, of course, how these can be, effected or implemented. What are your views? Do you think that when we talk about African culture, do you see this as a misnomer?
You see, the point really is that, the issue of child is something that is taken very seriously, both here and internationally, which was why we had the UNICEF created in 1946, and also made it to be a permanent institution in 1953. But I'm confused about this legislation you're talking about, because I want to find out whether it has to do the same thing with the Child Rights Act, which was enacted by our National Assembly in 2003. You see, I was thinking that the 2003 Act is what the federal government should have made effort to pursue, because I know that that law is yet to be domesticated by most states. It's only few states like Lagos State that have enacted that law, to make it to be effective. But in spite of that, you even find out that in Lagos State it's still not effective. So it is important that we make a distinction between child labor and child work. And when you're making a law, you have to put into consideration the environment, the culture of the people before such a law could be effective. So the idea of just rolling out laws without ensuring or bothering whether that law will be effective is really a problem. Because in our own environment, there are a lot of factors that are responsible for child labor or child work. So if those factors are not taken into consideration, I don't see how this law will work.
Well, but isn't it also this is, as it were, like a wake-up call to the various stakeholders, including the various tiers of government? I'll give you a specific example. Last year, for instance, I was in a Ebonyi state, and the state governor was building an international market. Part of his rationale for building that international market in Abakaliki was to ensure that the street hawkers, because according to him, most of the street hawkers you find in urban centers who are of Igbo extraction are actually from Ebonyi State. To say, look, take them off the streets as hawkers, give them shops, and those of them who also want to go to school can then have the benefit of going to school. Isn't this, therefore, part of the wake-up call, as it were, as a policy to various stakeholders?
I see that as a widely left project, because in the first instance, a child needs to be educated. A child needs a good environment. So you ask question, what has happened to the private schools, rather the public schools, the public institutions that are supposed to take care of the child in a place like Ebonyi State. So if you go to a place like Ebonyi State, you see that the level of poverty among parents, among children, they're very high. The level of unemployment. Building market, is it to make the children to become career businessmen or what? What do you really call a child? Are you training a child to learn how to trade? Or are you training a child to learn how to develop his skill, develop his potential, and be useful to himself in future? So the building an international market, to me, is not a solution to the problem. Part of the solution to the problem should have been to make sure that the public institutions, like the hospital, like the public schools, are well equipped so that the children will, at the early stage, be able to attend to this institution, provide jobs for parents, find a way to eradicate the level of poverty, because it's actually poverty, unemployment that is responsible for what we have come to be seen as child labor. So unless you do all that, building international market is not a solution to the problem.
I was saying that it is one of the steps to take to pull street hawkers off the streets, as it were, give them shops, and that way you can, over time, reduce the number of persons who will be tempted to be on the streets hawking. And those who have shops also have the benefit of going to school. Isn't that possible?
Building shop, that shop, are they giving out free? And what are they going to put in the shop? And what is even the mental capacity of a child to start managing a shop? You know, because I'm not sure that it's the right step. Because a child is somebody that is still very tender, that requires a lot of training, you know, a lot of counseling, and is supposed to be in the family circles and grow well so that the parent will be able to direct the person well. So when you build a shop for the person, it means that you are trying to create an independent life for him. So I'm not sure that it's the right step.
Sorry, we'll come back again to our Abuja studios where we have Mrs. Emeka Anuna, the Senior Program Officer with ILO. When we kicked off this conversation, we raised the issue of poverty, we raised the issue of socio-cultural idiosyncrasies, and this is the point we're also pursuing now, unemployment. So how effective is this likely to be? Because almost invariably, before you address those problems repeated by our discussant, Professor Ndubuisi at the Lagos Network Center, you are going to have a lull, a time lag. Will this policy be effective during that time lag?
Elimination of child labor is not something that can be achieved within a day. And like I said, it's the responsibility of different agencies of the government. The professor was talking about education. That's why I said the Federal Ministry of Education and also the state ministries of education have a role to play, which is specifically spelled out in the policy. The Ministry of Health, both federal and state, they have roles to play. And this has actually also been spelled out. And like he says, one of the things that can be done to encourage parents to send their children to school, which I know most states are not doing, is to have the issue of free education. Actually, the policy talks about having free education for the first, which is contained in the Child Rights Act that the Prof mentioned about, for the first 9 years of your educational life. That's primary and the first 3 years of secondary school. So if we have this in place, which is actually also part of the, as I said, the policy cannot work in isolation. It has to key into what other policies are doing, into the health policy, into the education policy, into the agricultural policy, into everything that we are doing as a nation to be able to contend with what we refer as child labor. And what the professor was referring to, the policy is not actually a law, it's a policy which is derived from the law. The Child Rights Act, which was enacted in 2003, this policy is derived, it quotes part of it. Also, Nigeria has ratified some of ILO international standards. I can tell you two specifically which relates to the issue of child labor. The Convention 138 on minimum age for employment, and then the second one, 182 of on elimination of worst forms of child labor. And these are all, so that's the policy is deriving its strength or its legal backing from this to say, it's like the policy is now saying, how do we implement these laws? How do we go ahead to make sure the laws are there? We are not saying we don't have laws. The issue we have is the issue of implementation. We are talking about, that's why the policy also has an action plan with details what will be done in the first year, what will be done in the second year, because I think the action plan is for 4 or 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, that's why we also have a monitoring and evaluation aspect of it. At the end of 5 years, we need to review where this is where we were when we started. This is what we have achieved. What next do we need to do to fill in the gaps to be able to go to the level where we want to be, which is the elimination of all forms of, the worst forms actually, because actually you cannot really eliminate child labor. What we are looking at is eliminating the worst forms of child labor, which we say inhibits a child from achieving his or her full potential.
We understand that the policy puts the minimum age for employment of a child at 16. Is that correct?
No, 15, which 15. Is actually contained in the Labor Act. Actually, the minimum age also, which is also what Nigeria ratified when he ratified the ILO Convention. The minimum age for employment for Nigeria is 15 years. But when you go to the Labor Act, the Labor Act tells us what kind of a work a child of 15 should do, what kind of a work a child at 16 should do, until what kind of a work a child at 17 should do until the child gets to the age of 18 years. I can give you an example. One of a child that is less than 17 is not allowed to work and not return home. A child under 17 is not allowed to work underground. Is not allowed to work with machineries that are heavier than him. Is not allowed to work underwater. You know, these are issues. They are all contained in the Nigerian Labor Act. That is not an issue. So so the minimum age is 15 actually for Nigeria.
Okay, let's return to Lagos, where we have Professor Ndubisi. Okay, and Professor Ndubisi, we'll get back to you after we come back from this very short break.
Running on the network service of the NTA from the stable of the NTA Educational Television. This quarter, a wide variety of educational programs. Farm Bus, Tuesdays 5:30 p.m. It is fun-filled and educative for children ages 5 to 11. Walk It Out, Saturdays 9 a.m. Walk It Out is a mathematics quiz program for students of junior secondary schools. Take a Step, Tuesdays 6 p.m. with a repeat broadcast on Sunday at 10 a.m. Take a Step is a general purpose quiz program for students in senior secondary schools. Young Inventors, join the Young Inventors every Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Young Inventors encourages and celebrates creativity, ingenuity, and originality among children and young adults. It's a bouquet of active participation, learning, and being educated in an interesting way.
Nigeria, we the people decree that the power of evil secrecy shall fail.
All Nigerians should understand that a divided Nigeria can only mean catastrophic consequences for the entire black race.
We all African countries count on you, and you are our beacon of hope.
That when Nigeria sneezes, all of us will catch cold.
All of us who look to Nigeria for lessons and inspiration never cease to thank God for this wonderful gift to Africa.
Nigeria enjoys the respect, the admiration, the friendship, and the hope of an entire continent.
The powerhouse of Africa.
Nigeria.
Unite and build Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria.
A message from protectors of Nigerian posterity.
A new day is almost a clean slate. The plethora of opportunities offered. The chance to choose.
Investing in agriculture is the key.
Set your agenda. Begin your day. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, thank you for being with us on the Good Morning Nigeria program, which is coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are discussing the newly enacted policy on child labor, and there is a distinction, of course, between child labor, the worst forms of child labor, and child work. We've had two guests with us, one here at the studios in Abuja, that's the Senior Program Officer of the ILO, and also in Lagos, we've been talking to Professor Friday Ndubisi of the University of Lagos. Professor, there are some of the matters arising from all of this. In terms of implementation, we've heard now that, of course, the policy derives from the Child Rights Act, which, of course, has not been domesticated in all the states of the Federation. But implementation is key. It has to be a gradual process. What's your take on what we need to do in order to ratchet up the implementation of the policy and other relevant aspects of the Child Rights Act?
Well, you see, the point really is that the tragedy of most of our laws here is implementation. You know, this law, the Child Rights Act, was enacted by the National Assembly in 2003. So up to now, most states are yet to domesticate them in their state to make them to be effective. But I want to believe that the law is very, very comprehensive. So the right thing to do is to encourage most states to ensure that that law becomes effective in their state, and an action plan to ensure that not only that the laws are made, but that they are implemented. Because if you look at the law, it's very, very comprehensive. It's a law that protects the rights of a child. Because we begin to ask questions. Why is it that if you go to the Western world, like a place like Britain, you go to a place like US, you don't find children on the street walking and so on and so forth? You see, at the early stage, children are supposed to be in their family environment, where parents are supposed to guide them well. But incidentally, because of our cultural peculiarity, it's possible that I can send my child to go and live with my relation. But at the same time, if I send my child to go and live with my relation, it's important that I monitor to ensure that that child is being trained in such a way that will be useful, be able to develop his full potential for his own use in future. Because a nation must emphasize on the interest and welfare of the child, because the children are the future of any nation. So it is something that we have to look at very seriously. At the level of policy implementation, there is the need to encourage the state to domesticate this law, to ensure that not only that they are domesticated, but that they are implemented. Because even in Lagos State, where this law has been domesticated, you still find children hawking in the street, doing menial jobs for a living. And part of the reason, actually, like I mentioned earlier on, is poverty, the level of unemployment. Most parents are poor, most parents are unemployed. They want their children to go out to get something to augment their income, which they at times use to even offset their fees and take care of their health problem and so on and so forth. So it's important that the state take action to empower parents economically so that they will be able to take care of their children effectively. Until these are done, it will be difficult to be talking about child welfare and protection.
So you're familiar with the Akwa Ibom example, where the state government has adopted, as it were, a policy and even a law that eventually will ensure that no Akwa Ibom child becomes the typical Ekaete, that is a house help in the urban centers elsewhere in the Federation. Is this one of the aspects that you would think is valuable in implementing this kind of policy?
See, really, I don't think that it makes sense for you to start having children without being prepared to take care of them. That's where the issue of the number of children you have comes in. The state has also to step in, come out with policy, not only coming out with policy and laws, but ensure that these policies and laws are effective. We don't just have to make laws. When laws are made, they need to be enforced. How do you enforce them? We have the law enforcement agency, we have our legal system. So until all those things are activated and ensure that they are implemented, so that people will see them and take a cue from them. We are just wasting our time. So really, you see that some poor homes, they have up to 5, 10 children, which they have no plans on how to take care of. Their idea is that let these children come on earth, and it is God that will take care of them. But the world has become sophisticated. We don't have to be relying on such things or relying on insisting that the state have the responsibility of taking care of our children. First of all, parents should know that it's their primary responsibility to take care of their children. The state can come in to assist. But even if the state does not come in to assist, you should know that your child is your primary responsibility and that you be well prepared to take care of the children that you have brought into the world.
Professor Friday Ndobese, Professor of Philosophy, University of Lagos, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Back in Abuja, Mrs. Chinyere Anuna, are there indices in this new policy that will probably ensure implementation, strict implementation and domestication at the various levels now?
Yes, and I will tell you what ILO has also done. What we have worked with 2 states at least now. 2 states have their state action plans on elimination of child labor. That is Oyo and Ogun State. And we are also working, we are going to be working with other state governments to be able to make sure that the policy does not stop at the national level. That we have what the state should do also at its own level to be able to eradicate the child labor. But when you look at the action plan, that's why I say the action plan is like the engine of the policy. When you look at the action plan, there are different levels of activities and to be carried out. There is one on legal framework, and maybe I need to bring this out. If you look at the Child Rights Act, it defines a child as somebody up to 18 years. And then if you look at our labor code, which I says that the minimum age for employment is 15, you will see that there is a discrepancy, and the policy has identified this as a gap. So there are activities that are listed in the National Action Plan to be able to address this. You know, to change, if you are going to change a law, it's not something that can happen overnight. It takes a long time. So, but these are things that should be done. Then you have the prevention level, where is to prevent it from happening at all. Then you have the rehabilitation level, where if a child is taken from child labor, what do you do to the child? So there are also activities that needs to be done. And like I said, it's no one. And then you have the issue of enforcement and prosecution, where you have the role of the police, you have the role of all the law enforcement officers. Then you have the issue of awareness creation, or the level of awareness creation, which each and every one of us should be part of in being agents of change when it has to do with child labor. So that's why I say it's a multi-sectoral thing. It's not something that you can do in a day or do in a year. It's something that is continuous. But you have to start somewhere, because this is at this point you say, okay, we have this now and we have action plan. The next thing is that what next, which has to be with implementation. And I think that is what we should be talking about how do we implement this, because if we actually implement it to the latter, what we have in the policy and the action plan, there is no how we are not going to see a drastic change in the number of children who are engaged in child labor. And like I keep saying, it's not something you also need to look at the other policies of government, the employment policy, job creation, agriculture transformation agenda. How does this also help to be able to build up capacities of families to take care of their children, so that children are also withdrawn from child labor? So that's why I keep saying that the policy cannot work in isolation. It has to work with all the relevant stakeholders and different sectors of the economy to make sure that we achieve the goal that the policy aims to do, which is to reduce drastically the incidence of child labor in Nigeria.
Okay, when we return from the break, we're also going over again to the Lagos Network Center, and we'll be speaking with Professor Sophie Oluwole. Stay with us.
Whether your need revolves around business or pleasure while in Abuja, the superb new Savannah Suites with innovative and modern luxury facilities in Area 3 is now providing a unique experience of hospitality in the FCT. It's a haven of peace and tranquility in our superior bedrooms and suites. The Chum Chum concept is still the best in town, dishing out mouth-watering recipes freshly prepared. Our bar is also stocked with your delightful usuals. Exotic venue for your conferences and other engagements. The Guarimpa Savannah Suites is comfortable, calm, and distinct. Visit us today or call 003-502-1519 or 005-362-9568 for reservations. Savannah Suites, a celebration of luxury and style.
Okay, thank you for staying tuned. This is Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. We are going over now to our Lagos Network Center, where we'll be joined by Professor Sophie Oluwole. Professor, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Hey everybody, how are you?
Okay, we are discussing the new policy on child labor. We've made a distinction already between child labor and child work, and the causative factors of child work or child labor we've also elaborated on with our two guests, the program officer, senior program officer of ILO, and Professor Friday Undubisi, whom we had up till a moment ago. The key issue now, what we would like to address, you may have your own perspective, but the key issue we would like to address has to do with implementation. And Mrs. Emeka Anuna says here very clearly that this is a holistic policy. It's not a policy in isolation. It is dependent on several other policies, pieces of legislation, as well as actions by various stakeholders, including all the three tiers of government. What is your take on this?
Thank you very much. I think your distinction between labor and work is very important. Every human being is supposed to work. When you labor, you are employed and you are paid. Children at home are not paid, but they work. I think we have to make a fundamental distinction there. Secondly, there's a difference between child upbringing and child abuse. If a child is not trained how to work, he cannot work when he becomes an adult. Now, let's talk of implementation. When a policy is made, it is made public. People are supposed to implement it, not government. Government comes in when it is not people do not react to it positively. When people are not taking it, are not working on it, then the government comes in. Now the question is, why are people not implementing this policy? Why are they not doing what government expects them to do? I think one of the things that the renowned professor said is that when the policy is the expression of the people's wish and tradition, you don't need to police it. Now, if you have a policy that goes against the culture, the tradition, the policy of the people themselves, then you have the government has a difficult time to make it. Now, that does not mean that everything you do in your culture is right. But the duty is to make them see the sense in your policy. Now, I think one of the problems is that we misdefine education. Education does not mean literacy in English. It means training, learning how to cope with your environment. And there's something we call the grandmother's education. That does not occur in the classroom. It does not occur in the school. So it is a question of mending grandmother's education with formal education. I don't think anybody will support that children should go on the street at 8 o'clock in the morning so that they don't go to school. But my worry is that when that child comes back from school, how does she learn how to do some things? He goes to the lesson, he comes back at 10 o'clock and goes to sleep. I think that's the question that we should be addressing. Implementation must carry along the people and their conviction and the acceptance of your policy.
Prof, we would like you to return to your takeoff point, the very fine and illuminating distinction you made between child work and child labor and the necessity for upbringing in order to prepare the child for work as an adult. Could you explore that a bit more so that our viewers have the benefit of that fine distinction?
I mean is that in traditional Yoruba society, for example, every child by the age of 15 knows how to do something. Either he knows how to weave the basket, how to sell in the market or so. That was our traditional informal education, which was functional. What becomes of that today? So that the child was working, the traditional society, he was not employed because he doesn't go to a factory to work to earn salary. But when the mother is in the market, the child is working with the mother there. He is not the one in charge. So what I'm saying is that traditionally we train our children to work. That's functional education. We go to school to learn ABC, mathematics, which are relevant. But is there a way of combining the two? Are you saying you don't need to train the child to work as well as to learn how to write and read and formulate theories? If you want to develop, your theory must carry away the practice of work, which most people, when you graduate, for example, at the University of Lagos, I don't want that kind of work. You want to be employed, and you are choosing your work. That is a contradiction. Work is work. But because we have never brought up those children to know that work is the essence of life, and your education is to help you to work, not necessarily to be employed. I use a language with my friends, self-employment. He said that's a contradiction. You don't employ yourself, you work. To employ yourself, you must write an application and be approved. But everybody is supposed to work, whether you are working for yourself or working for somebody else. It is when you are working for somebody else that you call it labor, to be paid for.
Well, Prof, very interesting perspective that, I mean, you've brought in. I mean, everybody's familiar, most viewers are familiar with your reputation. There's also another aspect to your philosophy which has to do with witchcraft, but we're not exploring that this morning. But we'll come back to our Abuja studios. Mrs. Lemekano now. Look, the Prof has outlined a number of issues. I do not know, do these philosophical thoughts underpin the new policy?
Yes, Prof is actually right, and that's why when we are talking about child labor, first of all, I said we need to distinguish between child work and child labor. And what Prof is referring to is what we refer as child work. And I said it's a work that is commensurate to a child's age, in order to socialize the child to be a responsible citizen, or even be a responsible adult. So when your child goes to school in the morning and comes back after school and does some house chores for you, that is child work. You're training even a child that is 2 years. You need to start teaching them, okay, after eating, take your plate back to the sink. And then when you get to the level of starting to wash plates, they need to know how to wash plates, because that is in a way to socialize the child. Like we said, in the old days, I've said it before, when children come back from work, from school, they go with their parents to the farm. They do the work that is community, even if it's to help their parents to be putting the seed in the ground. And then that's part of socializing the child. So we need to distinguish between child work and child labor. Child labor is anything that is exploitative. As once a child is exploited in any form, then it becomes child labor. But if it's a work that in order to socialize the child to be a responsible individual or an adult when the time comes, then that is not child labor.
Maybe Professor Sofieduwole will clarify for us within our context, because we know that the African value system holds the child very, very, in high esteem, and a lot of people do so many things to, of course, get a child. And if we have over 15 million Nigerian children being subjected to all forms of child work to the detriment of their education, health, and all that, now this is a very serious concern. What, in your view, constitute work in African value system?
If I understand you well, in the African value system, every child is supposed to grow up to be responsible, to be able to work and cater for himself and his family, not to be a burden to the society. This question of having a PhD and running around the streets is not an African culture. You have a certificate and you cannot work. And there's a contradiction there. Because if your preparation was adequate, immediately you go out there, you should have something to do. But when you are going for employment, you be an honest philosopher. Then you will work in the bank. You go to the factory. I don't know the relevance. Education is to prepare you for life. That is in Nigeria philosophy of education. To cope with the environment. So education is important, but it must be embedded with the idea of working, not labor, unemployment. I think we have to be careful with the capitalistic language. I'm not talking of witchcraft. The capitalist knows nothing about other than employment. The number of employment, the World Bank is in Nigeria, many people are unemployed. Does the bank mean they are not working? Do you know the market? Are they employed? Are they working? Those are the crucial things. Because I am not employed, I don't take a salary, doesn't mean I'm not working. So what we want to prepare the child for is to be able. If he needs to be employed, he should be capable of doing something for the employers. But if he wants to do on his own or our own, then he should be capable of doing something. You discover that I asked my students at the University of Lagos, BA philosophy, what does it qualify you to do? Absolutely nothing. If you have not learned something from home, if you have not, what Plato and Aristotle will not tell him what to do in Nigeria. His idea, he must implement it. I advised a student of mine after graduation to go to Abeokuta and learn how to make tie and dye. She laughed. 1 year later, she came to my office with a brand new car. She applied her philosophy about the plan and the color and so on. That is why education is a necessary condition for the 21st century. But education is not just literacy. You're not speaking in English or learning Plato or engineering. You must have the capacity to work. How many of our children who are educated can work? That is the fundamental question.
About this new policy, Mrs. Anunai here has told us it sets out to address the effect of this on national development and, of course, on the child. What are your thoughts about it? It puts the minimum age of employment of a child at 15.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't pray that my child should be employed. I have 6 children, none of them is employed, they are working. So to prepare my child to work at 15 is to prepare him for the capitalist market, which as far as I'm concerned is not bad, but it's not my vision that my child should be working for somebody and getting salary. Now, I agree that before the age of 15, sending your child out to go and work and take salary is, I think, is unethical. The child is juvenile. You put him in the factory, he has to stand up, sit down, come back in the morning. I mean, I don't think you should allow a child to be employed, not to work. By 15, she should be working. But to be employed for salary, you know workers, I mean, employees, they make you work 10 times for the salary they are paying for you. I think the nation, the tradition should also agree that making a child of 15 work for money is not in the interest of the child. The child doesn't even know the meaning of working. They will be working, they will harass him or her, So employment at 15, yes, I think that is not right because the child is not matured enough. But work, he should start working before 15, not employed.
The rationale for the policy is to ensure the healthy development of children so that early on they are exposed to the benefits of education, to proper upbringing and all that, so that, as you very well know, when a person gets fixated either on work or on employment, that could very well become a career, and then they forsake every other thing else, like quality education. Is there something that, we're talking about implementation now, and you raised that point about a disconnect between the culture and perhaps the policy framework. Is there something that, in your opinion, that we can do to leverage also on our cultural idiosyncrasies to ensure that we reduce to a great extent, because that's the idea of the policy, either child labor, particularly child labor. Now let's focus on child labor, since we know that child work has to do with upbringing. We've reduced the tendency for child labor, taking on our cultural aspects.
Our culture is that you should work. But I think I don't want to be sectionized. A part of Nigeria, we are experiencing something terrible. Boys do not go to school after the age of 12. They go and do business. And that is not education. And that, why? Because that culture puts money as the primary thing. As long as the boy comes back at the age of 15 and he's already a car, they don't care whether he's educated. I think that's a tragedy. That's, as I said, our culture has to be it's dynamic. What you are doing before, you have to mind to the new thing. It is good to have money, but you need education. Nobody can say you don't need education. Is it possible now, in this part of the country, to let the people realize that these children need to go further than primary school before they go into business, because the education will help their business? Instead of saying it doesn't matter how long you go to school, just bring money. I think that's where the contradiction is. You can work and have money, but your dignity, I mean, even your knowledge. For example, getting your views from abroad, you need to be well educated to be able to do that. And that's why some of you also are going to fraud, because we lack knowledge, we are ignorant. So what I am saying is that even if a culture puts high price on money, that does not mean that should be no education. And that education is not the primary school. You should let him go a little further, so that he's more confident, he can work well, he can still go back and work for himself. But to say that it doesn't matter whether I go to school or not, all he needs is money, I think we have to talk to our culture about that. The people should be enlightened to know that both are necessary. One is not sufficient.
Quickly for you, how can this policy be made to work effectively? Because Mrs. Sanuna here has told us, of course, the collaboration at the state level to ensure that it's domesticated and implemented. But how can it be made to work, that's elimination of child labor, without eroding our African values, of course, with regards to the child?
Of us are out to enlighten I think our problem is that government is not worried about passing information to the grassroots. We are talking about television. Nobody in my village is watching this program. We need to have workshops, enlightenment programs, to talk to our people. And please, when you talk to them, don't tell them they're primitive. Don't talk of obnoxious. Every society was primitive before. Until 1912 in Britain, women were not allowed to go to school. It's not an African thing. Professor Alice Rotten was the first woman was allowed to study medicine in Britain. And it was a classmate of Professor Lambo. So don't make it an African thing. Every society is supposed to learn from new developments. We need to go to the grassroots and talk to them at the local government. We not assume that what you and I and none of us are talking here are known to them. Before you make a law for people to implement, they must be enlightened. They must know why you are making the law. They must know the benefit for them and for their children. It's not a question of just writing something in the newspaper and say all of you, all your children should go to school, don't work. They cannot. So I think it is the grassroots enlightenment programs that we must promote. And I know so many women organizations are doing it. For example, Lagos State is doing skill acquisition. We need to enlighten the people. We make a law. Somebody is supposed to execute the law. If he doesn't know why you make a law, he doesn't understand the law, he doesn't know the benefit, how will you execute it? I think we should be out on the enlightenment programs so that these people can understand. We can exchange, we can dialogue. We can let them see it from a new point of view. It's not forcing them to accept it. It's a question of convincing and converting them so that we can both cooperate. They will know what is eating for their children. They will know why they should go to school. They will know the benefits. But if you don't do that, that's you doing the handful in the village and you are saying you're only in Lagos and Abuja, and we can go on contradicting ourselves.
Let's come back quickly to Mrs. Emeka Anunua here with us at the Abuja studios. You talked earlier about advocacy being a key aspect of the action plan for the implementation of this policy. What are the aspects of the advocacy? What are the issues you are driving at?
Okay, at the national level for the policy, you have the National Steering Committee on Child Labor. And then at the state level, you also have state steering committees, especially for the two states which I know, Oyo and Ogun, which are functional. And maybe I take it a step further in relation to one of the issues Prof raised. We also find that in some states where we are working, they have child monitoring committees at the grassroots. And these are people who are supposed to help to create the awareness at the community level. Speak to the people in the language they will understand, and also monitor children who are being withdrawn from exploitative situation in which they are in. The advocacy activities are at different levels. You know, earlier on I spoke about the gap in legislation. There needs to be advocacy to be able to address that. Also, you need advocacy at the national level also to make sure that the relevant NDAs have budgetary allocation on a yearly basis specifically to address issues of child labor, and that to see that this is also done. You also have advocacy, maybe also to visit maybe media houses also to enable them, ask them to help us to create awareness on the issue. And like Prof says, it's not only the television, we also talk about the radio, which is what mainly the grassroots people listen to. So we also do, and what we have done in some of the projects and the programs we have implemented is that we also do capacity building for journalists, for media people, to make them also understand what the issues are, and also ask them to be our agents of change.
Okay, well, we'll just listen now to Mrs. Chinyere Emeka Anunua. Thank you for being with us here in the Abuja studios. One point, obviously, that one necessary implication of our discussion this morning is that perhaps the sanctions regime inherent in the policy probably will take a backseat in the meantime because of the challenges of implementation, such as Professor Sophia Oluwole has also highlighted. And before her, of course, Professor Friday Ndubuisi at the Lagos Network Center. We saw her a moment ago, Professor Sophia Oluwole. We also like to thank you for coming on the program and for your very incisive perspectives on the issue. Thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take on 2 or 3 other aspects of the program before we have our wrap-up.
Excuse me. What people are looking for in Sokoto, we are having Sokoto. Good luck are what every parent and wish its pikin. In school, in business, in life. Everybody are look for good luck. Every country are look for good luck. In World Cup tournament, good luck. Or Louis are come back to life, good luck. The schools are now breaking all over to betterment the future of Almajiris. Good luck. Our universities are properly funded. Good luck. My damn brothers of the north, are you see what I'm saying? Agriculture are now walk over. And 33 modern dams are ready for farmers. Good luck. Fertilizers are purchased for almost free of charge. FOC. I am talking of power supply. That power reform are make steady supply of light every daily. Let us thank Chineke God. Power good luck.
Good luck continue for Nigeria.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. Down for one vision, Nigeria.
A new day is almost a clean slate. The plethora of opportunities offered. The chance to choose.
Investing in agriculture is the key.
Set your agenda. Begin your day. Good morning, Nigeria.
On to sports now. Later today, Nigeria's Super Eagles will be taking on the Bafana of South Africa in Cape Town. It is the second match of the African Cup of Nations qualifying series. Only last Saturday, Nigeria, of course, fell at home 2-3 to the Congo national side. Here is Musba Udan Wahab with this and other developments on the sporting scene.
All right, welcome. Let's talk sport now. In a matter of hours, the Super Eagles of Nigeria will have a chance to redeem themselves when they clash with their long-time foes, Bafana of South Africa, in a second Group A game. Let's have a preview of the match. The Super Eagles of Nigeria will be itching to soar over South Africa after losing their first match in the AFCON qualifiers 2-3 to Congo. And South Africa's coach Ephraim Shakes Mashaba is threatening to rock the boat as he insists the Bafana have unfinished business with the defending AFCON champions. Previous encounters between the two powerhouses have always favored the Super Eagles. Only last year, Nigeria ended a 19-year title drought by winning the 2013 Africa Cup of Nations on the turf of their rivals under Stephen Keshi, despite reservations about the Eagles' performance at the tournaments. Way back, South Africa returned from isolation only to meet their nemesis in the Eagles as they were effectively denied hopes of qualifying for the 1994 World Cup. The rivals also met at the semi-final of the African Cup of Nations in 2000, with the Super Eagles crushing the Bafana 2-0. The most recent meeting of the two sides was early this year when Keshi boys again literally sent their host packing right from their home with a 3-1 win at the group stage of the African Nations Championship CHAN tournaments.
Back inside, lovely touches from Nigeria. Uzaini looking for his second and he finds it brilliantly.
With this domineering record, Nigerians would have ordinarily expected the run to continue as the Eagles meet their long-time prey again in Cape Town. But for their Saturday's 2-3 home defeat to Congo's Red Devils, skepticism abound.
There are three Congolese players there. Oh, great pass, and that must be goal number 2. It is a goal for Congo. It is.
On the other hand, Shakes Mashaba's boys have begun the AFCON qualification hunts with a 3-0 win over Sudan in their opening match, and now Bafana are seeking for their first competitive win over Nigeria. The South African team has an excellent opportunity to dominate the AFCON qualifying group if they can beat the Super Eagles at the Cape Town Stadium, while the chance will become slimmer for the African champions. The match is scheduled for 8 p.m. Nigerian time. Meanwhile, it only became possible for the African champions Nigeria to continue their quest as they on Tuesday avoided a ban from international football after FIFA said the country's football federation had complied with a directive about its leadership. The world governing body said it welcomed the fact that the All-State president Aminu Negeri and his executive committee members had been able to return to work and as a result lifted the threat of sanctions. FIFA had given Chris Giwa, who replaced Megeri and his executive committee in controversial circumstances on August 26 until Monday to step down from his post, or Nigeria will face suspension from all matches. The deadline came and went with Giwa and his officials nowhere to be seen at the headquarters of the Nigeria Football Federation in the capital, Abuja. Megeri returned to work on Tuesday and showed reporters a letter dated September 8 from FIFA Secretary General Jerome Vake, which said it was aware that he has been able to resume his duty without hindrance. FIFA said it is now waiting for Megeri's executive committee to meet as soon as possible to set date for an extraordinary General Assembly to decide on future elections. The NFF has been in turmoil since the end of the World Cup finals in July. In that sport this morning, the program continues shortly.
And on the foreign scene, latest development regarding the investigation of the Malaysian air flight MH17, which crashed in eastern Ukraine in July, killing all 298 passengers on board, says the plane broke apart due to impact from a large number of high-energy objects. Patricia Esami Luba has more on this and other stories from around the globe.
Hello and welcome. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said a ceasefire in eastern Ukraine is currently being observed and that Moscow hoped talks on the status of Donetsk and Luhansk regions will begin soon. At a news conference with his Malian counterpart, Abdoulaye Diop, Lavrov said that Moscow was concerned by the buildup of Ukrainian troops in certain parts of eastern Ukraine, which could suggest they were preparing a strike group. The ceasefire, which took effect on Friday, is part of a peace plan intended to end a 5-month-old conflict the United Nations Human Rights Envoy said had killed more than 3,000 people. It has also caused the sharpest confrontation between Russia and the West since the Cold War. And in recent development regarding the investigation on the downed Malaysian Airlines flight MH17, which crashed in Ukraine, indicates that the plane broke apart due to impacts from a large number of high-energy objects, the Dutch Safety Board said in a preliminary report consistent with theory that it was shot down by a missile. The crash over pro-Russian rebel-held territory in eastern Ukraine on July 17 killed all 298 people on board, 2/3 of them from the Netherlands. The report said MH17 crashed due to external objects penetrating the fuselage. There are no indications that the MH17 crash was caused by a technical fault or by actions of the crew, it adds. Dutch investigators were unable to reach the crash site because of fighting between pro-Russian militants and Ukrainian government forces. Nearly 2 months after the crash, Tuesday's release is several weeks past a 4-week time frame generally required by the International Civil Aviation Organization. Extra time was given due to the complex nature of MH17 case. And elsewhere in Yemen, police in the capital, Sana'a, have killed at least one Shia Houthi activist after they opened fire on hundreds of protesters attempting to storm the government headquarters. Reports say more than 50 people were also injured and at least 5 activists have been killed in the clashes. Fighting has also intensified in the northern Al-Jawf province, where the government is conducting airstrikes against Houthi positions. The authorities claim a senior rebel commander was killed in one of these raids. And finally, the U.S. has hailed the creation of a new government in Iraq as a major milestone and a crucial step towards defeating the militant group Islamic State. Secretary of State John Kerry said Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi's cabinet had the potential to unite all the Iraq's diverse communities. Kerry is traveling to Saudi Arabia and Jordan this week as part of efforts to build a coalition to confront IS. The jihadist group has taken control of large swathes of Iraq and Syria and in June declared the creation of a caliphate or Islamic State. Among the first to congratulate Haider al-Abadi, who is the new prime minister, was U.S. President Barack Obama, who hopes the new government can start pulling Iraq back together. The two leaders agreed on the importance of having the new government quickly take concrete steps to address the aspirations and legitimate grievances of the Iraqi people. The U.S. had made the approval of a unity government a condition for increased military assistance. And that is it on the foreign scene. It's back to Kingsley and Claire. Do have a wonderful day.
Well, also soon we have also run our course today on the program, and it's been our pleasure having you with us. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul-Razak. Let's do it same time again tomorrow.
All right, my pleasure being with you on the program today. My name is Kingsley Osadola. We do hope you had a nice time watching us, but let some parents not take advantage of the distinction between child work and child labor, and they begin to push their children into deeper labor. Have a nice day from all of us here on Good Morning Nigeria, which came to you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority.
This is the network service of the NTA.
There are traditions that tell about the cultural identity of a people. Man grew from the unknown to create and develop a cultural heritage through time. Plateau State of Nigeria is one state that has many ethnic groups. As the tribes are diverse, so also the culture and traditions of the people. Among these ethnic groups are the Irigwe. They are found in Bassa local government area of Plateau State. The Irigwe are a people with a long history.
The history has it that Irigwe men had migrated from East Africa, Ethiopia, during the empire of Kush, and they migrated with so many people looking for arable lands, protective place from enemies. And they migrated, they traveled as far from east to through Central Africa, and then to Bruno Empire. And then finally they reached a place known today as Foboru. And they traveled from Foboru to Ritivo, that is Tutsenkura. And they stayed there for many years. And finally, maybe there were some problems that arose between the brothers that were there. Being in one place, you know, as you begin to increase in number, you find it difficult to stay in a place like Ritivo. So they decided to move forward.
The Irigwe continue their gradual migration, either looking for arable land or running away from enemies, till they settled at a place called Nuhwe. Nuhwe is well preserved. It is a palace of the Wohwe Branyi. The buildings have not changed much from what it used to be over a century ago. This tree is believed to have sprung up on the grave of one of the ancestors.
On
the grave of one of our fathers. His name was Ngwe, who was buried here many years ago. Every year we sacrifice a chicken for this tree. This place was a thick forest. All other trees have been cut down, but this one is forbidden, so nobody will cut it.
This rock is another historic site. It was here the forefathers used to pound their grains before they developed tools for carving a mortar and pestle. One other thing that has been kept up to this time of our civilization is the grinding stone. It is still being used instead of grinding machine. The Irigwe are predominantly farmers. They produce millet, maize, and hungry rice, among other crops. The pre-colonial dressing of an Irigwe man was animal skin, tied around the waist or hung on the shoulders. As part of a man's dressing is a bag made from strings of ropes. This is being featured at most traditional festivals. For the women, it was a mini skirt made from a particular grass, dyed in different colors. Over time, it included a hand-woven cloth which they tied up to the chest. They also have a peculiar hairdo. In addition to farming, the Irigwe also go on hunting expeditions.
An Irigwe man is a farmer, a hunter. Actually, if you watch, we were all farmers, if not because of the present this thing we found ourselves. Then hunting is one of the major reasons why that makes our people immigrated, start moving from places to places.
The Irigwe are very good at traditional architecture and construction of their houses, especially the barn where farm produce and other things are stored. Marriage among the Irigwe is by betrothal, and it starts very early in life.
The marriage in Irigwe land is very peculiar too, because sometimes when a baby is born, a baby girl, if at that same period another baby boy is born, the family of the baby boy will go to where the baby girl was born and take some type of food, tamba, to that place and make arrangement and tell the parents of the baby girl that this girl is going to be for my son. It's going to be a wife to my son, right from the childhood.
Since the Irigwe are farmers, they have ways of spending their times after the day's work and during the dry season. It is a time to frequent the market and socialize. Others use the period to rebuild their broken houses, while others engage in dry season farming. The Irigwe land is hilly and rocky with scattered trees. Yet on this land, they produce cash crops including yam. The species is known as Miango yam. It is an early maturing yam. The Irigwe are also known as Miango by other people.
Miango is not a tribe. It's just a name given to the first person who crossed from Kwol to Miango, and he was known as Nyango. And because the place developed so quickly, so fast, and the number of people that were here in Miango